Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, here on BuckeyeHuddle.com. It is Thursday, September 29th, just a couple days away from the Rutgers game, homecoming at Ohio Stadium here in the 100th year of Ohio Stadium, the old horseshoe on the banks of the Olentangy. And yes, I know fans for Ohio State don't necessarily get that excited about Rutgers. Ohio State has dominated the series, but there's going to be a year where do they overlook them? Do they trip up against them? Maybe. It's not gonna be this year, in my opinion, but, I'm just an outsider watching this program. I mean, obviously, I've known Greg Schiano for years, but let's bring in somebody who does know them well. Richie Schnyderite of the Knight Report. Let me hit that button right there. Richie, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I kind of agree with you. I don't think this is the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, Greg Schiano did go in and have a pretty big rebuilding process, and I'm sure we'll talk about
Mhm,
that over the next 15 minutes or so. But let's just get right into it. And Rutgers is 3-1 this season.
mhm.
But they're coming off of an Iowa game, a very disappointing Iowa game. Two offenses that probably are not amongst the best in the Big Ten. What's the mood of the fan base? I mean, what's the mood of the program coming, out of that game?
Yeah, so obviously both teams are at the bottom of the Big Ten in terms of total offense, in terms of yards per game, rushing, passing, etc. It was just a brutal game overall, and they couldn't move the ball whatsoever. There was only one scholarship quarterback available. The run game was miserable. It was just a bad game for Rutgers overall. From the fan base perspective, I think a lot of them are getting a little fed up with the offensive coordinator because it's now year three with the same guy in Sean Gleason, and you still haven't developed a quarterback. Your offensive line's still pretty maybe. I don't even know if I would go I might go like worse than that, but it's been pretty bad. I mean, the left tackle situation's a big issue. The interior guards have been struggling at times. Overall, I think a lot of the fan base just expects more out of year three. You would think year three of a rebuild, it's kind of when you start to see that upward trend, but now it's more like you're kind of seeing a downward trend a little bit.
And and I'll get into that one here in a minute. But you
Mm,
bring up the quarterback position, and I've gone through the stats, and three players have
mm,
attempted passes, but one of them is Johnny Langan. I mean, there's a name, Noah Vedral. We
mhm.
haven't seen him yet. I mean,
Yeah.
what's going on at this quarterback position, and who could be more than one person? Who would you expect
Mhm.
to see go against Ohio State on Saturday?
So there's always been a lot of speculation that Vedral's going to come back one of these weeks. He's been out since training camp. I actually had him as a projected starter back in spring. I had him as projected starter when training camp started. I think if he's good to go, he'll probably be the starter, but it doesn't sound really optimistic there. Gavin Wimsatt was kind of rotating in and out with Evan Simon, and those two kind of both bring different things to the table. Wimsatt's more of a dual threat type, whereas Simon's more of the I guess conservative passer who's not going to force too many turnovers. But I mean, if Wimsatt's healthy, I think you'll probably see the roulette between Wimsatt and Simon on Saturday. I think Vedral's still probably a week or two away, but that's just a guess. Shiano's very secretive when it comes to injuries, and like we don't even get to know much about anything like that.
Yeah, and certainly I don't know if Ohio State's the game you wanna drop a guy who's been injured into that game, especially if you
Yeah.
talk about tackle issues and guard issues. I mean, if you
Mhm.
can't protect the guy and he's certainly less than 100%, probably not the right situation in a game that Vegas sees ends in the 40, 41
Yeah.
point range, depending, as of the time we let's see what happens when the sharp money comes in. But
Mhm.
talking about numbers still, Rutgers has put up 16 points per game against FBS foes. I mean, if the quarterbacking situation isn't great, if the running game isn't necessarily setting the world on fire, how do they even get to 16? I mean, how are they scoring?
Honestly, they've been very dependent on the run game. Like we've seen Johnny Langan in game one, kind of, I think out of the 18 snaps they took on that game winning drive against Boston College in game one, I want to say 7 or 8 of those plays were run plays with Johnny Langan just up the middle. He's a tough SOB. There's no way around it. He's kind of that Swiss Army knife type that you could play. You could put him at tight end. You could put him out wide as a receiver. He's played running back. He's played quarterback. The running game did get going a little bit versus Boston College, and it did get going against Temple slightly. And then Wagner obviously is Wagner, so there's really no expectations there. But yeah, I mean, this team's gonna thrive on the run. If they can establish the run game early on, that's what they're gonna go to throughout the majority of the game. But the pass game's been non-existent for the most part.
Let's jump over to the defensive side. And in this week's edition of the numbers don't always tell the story, Rutgers is number 9 in total defense, number 2 against
Mhm.
the run. Is that an anomaly? I mean, again, BC, Temple, Wagner, I mean, Iowa and its anemic offense. Um, how good is this defense, honestly? I mean, and do you feel that Rutgers has seen any sort of test? I mean, again, as I said, BC is kind of, they're on a downward trend right now. I don't know a whole
Mhm.
lot about Temple, and anybody who watches this show or the Big Ten, and even in the slightest bit, knows that the Iowa offense is extremely limited.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Iowa scored a lot of their points on defense, to be honest. Between the pick six and I think the other one was a pick that just went 40 yards or something like that. So I mean, the defense overall though for Rutgers has been pretty solid. Mind you, it's went against some anemic offenses in Boston College and a first-year head coach at Temple, a Wagner team that hasn't won a game since 2019, and an Iowa team that has what a bottom five offense in like the country. So it's hard to judge. They are thin at linebacker. They only have two linebackers currently that have seen starts going into the season. So that was a little concerning. They lost a lot of guys to injury. Moses Walker's was out, four-star freshman Moses Walker was out for the season before even training camp began. The top edge rusher in Muhammad Toure, who was kind of splitting between linebacker and edge, he was out for the season with a torn ACL. So they did lose a lot of guys. They lost a couple cornerbacks to the NFL. Trey Avery's with the Titans now. They lost Fadukasi, who's with the Bucks. They lost Fogg, who's with the Fogg had a mini camp invite. So I mean, there's a lot of youth on this team in defense. They're rotating in a ton of defensive linemen. I think Greg told us beginning of the season he's rotating in around 10 guys total between the four spots. So that's interesting. The secondary is probably their strongest suit, and they've been pretty solid so far. They haven't really given up much of anything. But overall, I mean, it's young. I think next year is going to be that year for this defense, as they're still kind of learning and still gaining experience and stuff like that. But they are a solid defense. Now, will they stop a top tier offense in Ohio State? That's a different question.
Right, and as we look at the defense and you kind of single out the secondary, or who are
Mhm.
what's a name or 2 names of players that Ohio State fans should probably keep an eye on in terms of
Mhm.
this Rutgers defense?
So far, going into the season, I really thought Max Melton, the brother of Bo Melton, who I'm sure most Big Ten fans know, was going to be that top guy on this defense. But he's had his struggles as of late. He is cornerback one, so I'm intrigued to see how he goes up against this Ohio State wide receiver core, which is stacked. Um, Another name I'd probably keep an eye on was Aaron Lewis. He actually enrolled at Michigan as a freshman, but transferred, I think, in the middle of training camp and ended up at Rutgers somehow. South Jersey native, so kind of makes sense there. But he's probably the team's top edge rusher for the moment. We'll see if that continues or not. And then the other guy I'd probably keep a close eye on is Christian Izien. He's a little undersized. He's an Erasmus Hall guy. He's playing safety for Rutgers. But he's kind of moving up a little bit because they don't have much linebacker depth, so he's playing a little bit closer to the line. He's a pretty good run stopper from that safety spot, and he's just super athletic. I think he had 16 tackles last week, so I mean he's kind of doing it all for this defense at the moment.
And you're watching the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, and I'm joined by Richie Schnyderite of the nightreport.com. And you kind of touched on this a minute ago, but I wrote it down as a question, so you were reading my mind. It's a limited sample size here in 22 so far, but would
Mhm.
people consider this year, has it been a step forward, a lateral step, a step backward? I mean, again, you kind of told us there, but more of a chance to expound upon that one.
It's weird. I honestly thought it would be. It's hard to say a step backward because there's just such a youth movement. You're just trying to get these guys experience at this point, whether that be the quarterback spot that's rotating in a freshman and a redshirt freshman, or the offensive line's got four new starters, and I think like 12 or 13 new bodies in the room overall. Defensive line's young, linebacker core is thin. So I mean, I would probably say it's a step back overall this season. But that was kind of expected because you still have to rotate in all the old guys from the Ash era. From I think there was one or two from the Flood era that were still around. So Greg Schiano is all about just getting his guys in here and getting them reps at this point. I know the portal kind of helps a little bit in terms of rebuilding, but at the same time, if you're not helping with the NIL process, you're not going to be able to rebuild that easily. So it's been a step back so far, but overall, I think the progress is still an upward trend.
Here, normally I would ask you, or I would ask, the opposing expert, your team wins the game if, and, I think we both have kind of said that, the odds are pretty difficult here
Yeah.
for that situation. So I'm going to ask you a little bit of a different question, and,
Mhm.
it might not even be a fair question, but is 40 points too many? I mean, is that just too much disrespect by the odds makers? Let's just call it around 40. Let's not
Mhm.
deal with the hook. Let's not deal with a floating point or anything else. Is that too many in this one?
I'm gonna say no. I think this Ohio State team's phenomenal. I mean, you can kind of speak on that a little more, but it looks like they slowed down a little bit when playing Wisconsin late last week. So they kind of gave up a couple points here and there, pretty late. So I mean, is it too many? No, but I don't. It's a tough call because this Rutgers offense has been so bad that I see a struggle. I don't know how they're going to score. I think they're going to struggle mightily on offense. Maybe they sneak a late garbage time point or two, like maybe a 10 points overall and 55-10, something like that. I don't know how much hatred there is between Ryan Day and Greg Schiano. So, I mean, if there is a little bit, I could see him running up a little bit more, but I don't think there's much. So, I mean, I think they'll probably be like a 55-10 game, nothing crazy.
Right, which kind of leads us into the prediction, which you kind of gotten to. I mean,
Yeah.
just for to clarify, the Wisconsin game. Braylon Allen runs for 90 some of his 167 in the fourth
Hmm.
quarter against twos and
Yeah.
threes, scores a long 75-yard touchdown. I mean, it certainly was a case of, all right, we're done. Let's just, let's get home and be done with it. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what you get there. But I mean, again, you say 45-10, but for the I think that, or 50, or potentially
55-10.
55-10,
Yeah.
which is a cover. Do you think that, since I have to have something that's kind of finesse in this, just because I do a written piece out of this as well,
Yeah.
do you think do you think at any point Rutgers is able to kind of keep it close, or is it a situation of where it's kind of shock and awe? It's just, it's Rutgers shows it's a team that is still in transition with Greg Schiano trying to bring guys in, has a ton of sophomores in the two deep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe the first couple of series, to be honest. This is just it's a big gap in talent. You could see it in the recruiting rankings. You could see it in the transfer portal rankings, et cetera, whatever. There's a huge gap here, and this Rutgers team is nowhere near Ohio State good, or even close to competing with Ohio State's. Now, are they closer to competing with the middle of the pack of the Big Ten? Yeah, they're getting there. I don't know if you'd even consider them there yet, but they are getting there. It's like I said, it's an upward trend. A lot of youth, a lot of inexperience. The offense is it's questionable right now. This OC, who knows what will happen with him? It's year three and he hasn't developed a quarterback. That's a concern. So I mean, yeah, I think that 55-10 mark is probably pretty accurate. Now you mentioned Braylon Edwards, who ran for 90 yards in the fourth quarter. Rutgers doesn't have a Braylon Edwards or Braylon Allen. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have a Braylon Allen, so that makes it that much tougher to even run during garbage time. So, do they sneak a touchdown? I'd probably say yes. It'll probably be late, but at the end of the day, I still think it's going to be probably a 40-plus point win.
Well, there you go. So between the two of us, we're saying, if sports wagering is legal in your state, maybe you should
It
consider.
is.
I mean, it will be in Ohio come January 1st. Unfortunately, Ohio State's goal and national semifinals would be on December 31st, so they're leaving some
Hmm.
money on the table. But
Yeah.
Richie, I really appreciate it. Anything that you're working on over at your site, just in terms of anticipation of the game leading up?
No, we kind of do the same thing every week. We have like a Throwback Thursday piece comparing recruiting rankings, so that's gonna be fun to look at because like 4 star, 4 star, 4 star, 2 star Rutgers, 2 star. But no, other than that, we do a bunch of preview pieces. I think we're actually gonna have one of our buddies, Alex, on our pod. Pretty much. Other than that, it's just a lot of prediction stuff. It's tough this week just because most people are predicting a blowout, and it's probably going to be a blowout. So it is a tough one, but it'll be fun to watch for the first quarter.
And one last throwaway question: What is Rutgers Al still a thing? And what is he saying about this one? Is he saying
Uh,
55% Rutgers?
he hasn't posted yet for this game at least. He has projected a win every single week so far. No surprise there. He does still call Rutgers the USC of the East. I don't know if you could say that anymore, considering where USC is now. But yeah, no, I'm sure he'll project a win. I'm sure he'll be on all the Ohio State message boards doing the same thing, projecting a win there. And he's a character. We'll put it like that.
He's something. He's something. I get it. Well, Richie, I thank you for being part of the show for the Big Me
Mhm.
Kickoff, and hopefully see you here very soon. And I want to thank
Yeah,
you all for watching the show. We will have plenty of post game reaction. We'll have our pregame show about 3.5 hours before the game, and then immediate post game reaction. So don't miss out. So much stuff that you can catch here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. But until then, signing off for the Big Me Kickoff. Talk to you very soon.